morning, everybody. How's it going there? It's very bright here. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Nigel. That was sort of fascinating. I'm a shopkeeper now. Okay, so I operate in a very different world to Nigel. So Nigel is in this big sort of high-tech world. I run 2 supermarkets in North London. Have you heard of Budgeons? Okay, so Budgeons is now a franchise. So Budgeons was a little chain of stores that was bought by an Irish company called Musgrave. And Musgrave have a view that it's really good for food retail to be part of the community like it used to be. So while Nigel is talking about, going into the future, actually, I'm talking about going back to the past almost. It sounds a bit strange. But about connecting in communities. So Budgeons, the principle of Budgeons is we're all independently owned. I've got 2 stores in North London, and we are working in a community. So it's contrast to someone like Tesco, who run 3,000 stores, all from one office, not a million miles away from here. Okay, so I'll come back to that in a little bit. Let me also, a bit like Nigel, tell you my kind of journey, how I got to here. I call myself a caring entrepreneur, by the way. Okay, so I'll explain what that means. It's a different slant on being an entrepreneur, which I've kind of evolved to over time. So as Paul said, I grew up in Dublin. I went to a pretty ordinary school, Catholic school in Dublin, like most of us. Big school. Didn't hate it, like Nigel, but I didn't enjoy it that much. But as Paul said, I was blessed with reasonably good brains. I was quite good at doing exams, so I got very good equivalent of A-levels. Went to university, did a business degree, and actually I came alive at university. I really loved it. I kind of was the freedom or something about it. So, and university's not for everybody. Paul didn't go to university, Nigel did. Those guys have both done very well. So if you have an inkling that's what you want to do, then go do it. But don't let somebody push you into it. If you don't feel it's right, then go get a job, do something. I think Nigel talked about caring or being passionate. That's my biggest thing, is you've got to love what you do. It's really soul-destroying getting up every morning thinking, oh God, that's really... And again, obviously, Nigel, you've experienced a bit of that. Don't do it. Do something you really love. Because if you care and you're passionate about something, then you will enjoy it. You spend, roughly a third of your life working. You spend a third working, a third sleeping, and a third doing the rest. So, if you can't leave out sleeping, you spend a lot of your time in work. So make sure you do something you really want to do. So I did a business degree. I was very fortunate to be offered jobs with a number of people. I was in Ireland, same old story, where it was 83, 84, another recession. It's a kind of history, goes over, repeats itself. The Irish economy was completely grim. I got offered one job working for an Irish packaging company, huge big company, but I didn't really want to go into cardboard boxes. It wasn't very exciting. Another job for Procter & Gamble, washing powders. Didn't sound very exciting. And then I got a job offered for Mars, selling sweets. And that sounded far more interesting. So I joined, as Paul said, as a graduate trainee. One of the great things about Mars was I was there for 4 years, and I did, I think, 5 different jobs in 4 years. So one of the things, getting lots of different experience, it helps you get the perspective that Nigel talks about. I wholeheartedly agree with everything Nigel says. Try and get, when I was at school and when I was at university, I actually worked, my first job was in the local newsagent, which turned out to be quite good, actually, learning to be a shopkeeper at a very early age. And I built the trust of the guy who owned it, who was an entrepreneur, such that when I was 17, he actually went off on his honeymoon and left me in charge of his shop for a month. So that was quite good. But I did, I was a postman, I was a cashier, I worked in an amusement arcade in the States, I was a waiter, I did research. So I did lots of different jobs and learned a lot on everyone, including when I was a postman, I learned how you don't run an organisation. Okay, the Irish Post Office was a lesson in the most appalling management you could possibly imagine. So I would really encourage you to do different things. Because first of all, you'll help get a better idea of what you like doing. And second, you just get different experience. And it all adds to kind of that building of a kind of a perspective on life and business, if you want. So yes, I was at Mars. I got a phone call one day. I'd always had an inkling that I wanted to set up my own business. And I got offered a job to set up a new division for a big advertising agency, Ogilvy and Mather, who wanted to set up this that helped retailers and suppliers work together. It's something that's quite common now. A lot of big suppliers, and Mars were at the leading edge of this, helped that if they understood a bit about retailing, it would help them work with retail customers rather than just selling stuff to them. And I'd done that at Mars, so I got this job. And after a year then, Ogilvy and Mather were taken over by WPP, which is another big company, another one of these companies like this guy works for. They just sort of devour everything around them. And kind of long story short, it wasn't working out for them, so we had a thing called a management giveaway. It's not a management buyout because you don't buy it, you're just told to go and you can have the company if you want. So me and another guy, so I took a risk leaving Mars. I could have stayed there for a long time. I could still be there, God forbid. But I kind of done that and done another multinational company. But, I was curious. I was young. I was only 23. I think I was 23, 24, something like that. Because I'm born on the 31st of August, I was always the youngest person in my class in school. And then somewhere I missed a year on the way, so I was incredibly young. I was only 17 when I went to university, so I was still really young at the time. So I thought, what have I got to lose? This sounds interesting. It was exciting, setting up something new. So we did this for a year. Then we ended up on our own, which was... again, I could have gone and got another job, but I felt we were onto something. And even though we didn't make any money in the first year, the agency absorbed the losses so we could start again. Very quickly realised that the person I had been given the business with was really not very competent. So I had to get rid of him. So that was another risk. I had to buy him out, basically. And in the end, I did this for 18 years. It was great fun. I had a lot of great experiences. Paul, I don't know if Paul's told you about his career, but at one point he was brought into Golden Wonder, which was being completely and utterly destroyed by the previous management. And there was a chap who used to be the leader of the England rugby team. He's always on TV and very blah, 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 blah. But in the process of doing it, he also destroyed Golden Wonder while he was leading the England rugby team. So Paul and Clive and a few others were brought in to revive it, and we did a lot of work with them in that period. So there was a lot of exciting things happened. I travelled the world. I did a lot of work in the States. I did work in Asia, everywhere. But I started, and I did it for 18 years in the end, in total, from the time I left Mars to the time I decided to quit. But I started to get more and more despondent by multinational companies and their lack of care and really only being interested in the next quarter's profits. The number of times we had phone calls from clients cancelling really important projects because there was a profit warning coming up, or the chief executive's office in London or Brussels phoned in and said, you need to save £500,000 in the next few weeks because we're short of profits. And I just didn't like that ethos, and I believed that there's something about caring, that businesses should actually care, and I felt that many businesses I came across just wanted to take. That's all they did. They didn't really put back. And yes, they did charitable stuff, and it was just, there was somebody in some office somewhere who was in charge of what's now called corporate and social responsibility. You got to give a little bit back. But it was kind of meaningless. Around that, probably in the last, 5 or 6 years of the consultancy, the big supermarkets had started to invade the high street. So Tesco, you will be familiar with Tesco Expresses all over the place, okay? 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. The high street was run by independent retailers, mostly small chains, medium-sized chains. And Tesco bought an organisation called One Stop. So overnight, they acquired 1,000 high street stores, just like that. Now, One Stop still exists, and it's owned by Tesco, although they don't brand it as such. So they really invaded territory, and in the consultancy, we saw it was a great opportunity to actually really specialise in that small sector. So we could advise people. We did a lot of work with Marks and Spencer's, who also went into it. But these people didn't know how to run small shops. So we did a lot of work with them there, and we also did a lot of work with the other people who were trying to survive in the sector that had been theirs and suddenly a predator had come into. And I talked at conferences a lot about saying how it was really easy to compete against Tesco if you did something different and you were based in the community. So when I got bored with the consultancy and felt that I didn't like the ethics, I decided, well, the obvious thing to do is to go and be a retailer. I spent my whole life somehow or other working in retail, but mostly advising other people on how to do it. So again, I took a risk. I was running the consultancy. I had Nigel talked about aha moments where I really felt trapped. I needed to get out, but running the consultancy was a full-time job. I'd done well enough that I could remortgage. So I owned 3 properties, so I did some remortgaging, allowing myself so I could quit the consultancy, get my partners to buy me out, which I got something for, but not a huge amount. But I could afford to just take some space to figure out what I'm going to do next, rather than have to bounce from one thing into another. And I knew Musgrave were a client, so I knew what was happening in Budgeons. So that was certainly one of my ideas, but I had a number of other ideas as well. So I took some time out. And then 6 years ago, took over the Budgeons in Crouch End, with a view of being involved in the community and caring. You get companies who manufacture all their pizzas in Belgium for all of Europe, and they drive them in trucks all the way around Europe. And it's completely mad. And actually it's destroying the environment. And one of the things I care about is, my generation has really trashed this planet. And we're going to leave it to you guys to pick up the pieces afterwards. And I don't think that's on. So I really care about doing something different, and that's what we've been doing in Thornton's Budgeons. So let me tell you some of the things we have done. So yes, we're very heavily involved in local food. Okay, so I'm really keen to promote and encourage people who've set up small food companies. Local if possible, but there's an old colleague of Paul, Steve Wardlaw, who came to me. Steve is, early 50s, I guess. He's worked for companies all his life, and recently he took a risk to go out with some others and set up a new popcorn company. And he wrote to me, and as soon as the letter arrived at my desk, I said, of course, I'd absolutely love to give you guys, you're going for it. Of course we'll try the product. If it fails, it fails, but we're going to give you a try. So we're really keen to help small food companies, particularly local. And he's not local, he's in Plymouth, but because he's an old mate, that works for me. And also, but I like his spirit. He's doing something, he's giving it a go. And local food, the other thing about it is that the products taste much nicer because they're small, they're handmade. So there's this mass production thing. And while the fashion industry has gone into small line production, so the food industry is just trying to make bigger and bigger runs and consolidation and centralisation. And Mars now makes, they've consolidated, they have, I don't know how many factories in Europe, but the one in Slough that used to make everything just makes Mars bars for all of Europe now, or just makes Bounties or something. I don't know which one it is. It's all so disconnected from the reality of food. I mean, food grows in the ground, people farm it, make it, and we eat it. And people are so disconnected from that. So we have really pushed on that. We, as part of caring for the environment, we were the first supermarket to ban carrier bags, giving away free carrier bags. We used to use 35,000 carrier bags in each store, each week. Okay, can you imagine that? That's just 2 shops. Okay, so since we banned it, and we also committed, when we did that we would give so a carrier bag used to cost 1p. So every time we didn't give 1p carrier bag away, we'd keep that money and we'd set up a charitable trust. And since we've done that, we've given away £125,000 to 42 different local community projects in our areas and saved 12.5 million carrier bags. Okay? Can you imagine if Tesco did that? Can you imagine how much money they could put back into communities and how many carrier bags they would save from going into landfill? It'd be quite extraordinary. And that, at the same time, has done something for the environment positively, and it's helped our community at the same time. So that's one example of what we've done. Another one is we have actually... another example is we have a farm on the roof of our Crouch End store. Okay? Sounds a bit crazy, but we grow fruit and vegetables on the roof of the store. Okay? That's local food to its extreme. We had an empty roof. And I got an email from this extraordinary woman called Azul, who said, oh, you do good things and I'm involved in food, can we have a coffee? And she came in and I kind of showed her this roof space and it was like, wow. And we created this thing called Food from the Sky. Okay? She's also my fiance now as well, so that's kind of, you know, that kind of worked well as well. In fact, I'll tell you, when we first met, it took us about 10 minutes to recognise that both of us were recently divorced. And the meeting went that way a bit before we went back to food growing. But these things happen, you know, and it's just, you know, when she sent me this email, I got lots of emails from people. I thought, yes, yeah, this woman sounds interesting. I had an intuition, I suppose. So we have people in our community who volunteer to come and grow food on the roof of the store, okay? And then we harvest it every Friday and we sell it downstairs. And then the money goes back into the garden again. And we want to expand that now because I really believe that there's a massive opportunity for people, your generation, to learn how to grow food, to make food into meals and to produce food. This business of, you know, as London as a city and its in or around its surrounding areas are completely dependent from food from elsewhere. And if oil runs out, some people say it will, or it becomes so expensive, this nonsense of shipping stuff all the way around the world is not going to be able to happen. So, you know, I would say to you guys, food is a really interesting place to be. So we are running apprenticeship schemes on the roof, but the roof's very small. So we have a vision that we want to set up a commercial farm. We found a piece of land in Enfield. We're going to set up a farm that is commercial, but the profits from that farm will then go towards running it as an apprenticeship scheme to teach people how to grow food, how to make food, and then we will sell it through the store and through other sort of stores. So it's kind of a connected loop, if you want. One of the things that I said about being a caring entrepreneur, there's you can draw, if there was, I can just draw a video. Imagine one of these matrices with two, who's done maths here, most of you at some point, 2 dimensions. So one is caring and the other is commerciality. Okay, so on the caring scale, charities, not-for-profit organisations, there's lots of people out here who are doing some great stuff, but they're completely uncommercial, which often means they don't survive, or they're dependent on grants and other people's goodwill. And on the other extreme, you've got businesses who are mostly commercial but don't care. Now, I see our business being in the middle. And actually, I see all big business recognising that they are going to have to care. Because as Nigel said, you know, as customers have more power than they've ever had before. And as a result of that, people are starting, and okay, it's Guardian socialist, campaign socialists at the moment, but more and more people are starting to actually care about the ethos. So I believe that businesses, so any of you who go into business, you know, 10 years down the track, I think you'll find that most big businesses actually have to care. And people are recognising that. And big companies, like Unilever, for example, have started to get that caring is really important. And it's good business, you know, but it has to be genuine. You know, if people pretend, the great thing about the current way, if you pretend you're something you're not, you will be caught out so quickly. So that's why I talk about being a caring entrepreneur. Tell you a couple of funny stories. I mean, the great thing about what we're doing is we have such amazing fun. We have a poet laureate. We're the only supermarket in the world with a poet laureate. We've got 2 complete lunatics. They're both American, who are our poets. The one in Gratchen, she's completely mad, but she's very entertaining. We decided, because we're very keen on a more sustainable future, we decided to sell squirrel a few years ago. Okay, now, there's a story behind squirrel. A guy I know, came back from, he's a Liberal Democrat councillor, he came back from a weekend with a Liberal Democrat peer who has this big estate up somewhere in the north of England, who used to shoot lots of squirrels. And Alexis had this idea, why don't we just go and shoot, him and his mates could shoot the squirrels on Hampstead Heath, and we could sell them. And I thought this would be a great April Fool's thing for the guys at Budgeons, because they would absolutely, I mean, they're really challenged by me, okay, because they're quite conservative, and, you know, it's, oh, Christ, what's Thornton doing now? So we're going to send them an April Fool joke, just telling them the story. We didn't in the end, but actually it became a reality, because we realised, farmers just kill squirrels because they're a nuisance, these grey squirrels. And they just chuck them away, they go into landfill. So we found a source through the people who supply our pheasant and stuff like that to get squirrels, and we started to sell them. And people started to buy them, and it was fine. 6 months later, the summer before last, in that silly season, the first week in August when there's nothing else in the news, the Daily Mail ran a story on page 3 headlined "Wildlife Massacre in North London," which is all about us selling squirrels. And I had a tip-off. I'd been at dinner with an old friend, actually, Jeremy Main, the night before. I was in a restaurant in London, my phone rang. And I don't know why I answered, because I don't normally, and it was the Daily Mail wanting to know had I have any comments to make. So I kind of knew this was coming. But I sort of forgot about it, and I went into work, and I had a meeting at 8 o'clock. I came back to my desk at 8:30, and I don't exaggerate to say my desk was littered with post-it notes from every newspaper, every TV station. So this ran for about 3 or 4 weeks. I was on Sky News, I was on TV. German TV continued to run it. You know, it was on German TV again last week, so even 2 years on. It was in The Economist. So I got 2 lifelong ambitions. I was in Private Eye and The Economist, both over the squirrels. So, but actually 99% of the support people we had in touch with us were very positive about what we were doing. The other funny thing was that the chairman of Musgrave, who is quite conservative, and he was on holiday in Canada, apparently. Somebody told me this story later on. And he was in his hotel, and he was in the gym, and he's running on the treadmill. And he suddenly saw Sky News on, and he saw me on Sky News talking about squirrels. And he fell off his treadmill, apparently. So, there are lots of other funny stories I could tell you, but I'm conscious of time. So, in terms of my sum up, if you want to be an entrepreneur, or even if you want to just, I don't know, be successful in life, there are a few things I would say that are important. Risk-taking is one. Yeah. Particularly when you're young and you take a chance. You've got little to lose, and you see how a number of times I took risks in my career, and I certainly wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if I didn't take risks. The next thing, and I think this is probably the most important of everything, and if you only remember one thing from what I say today, is about responsibility. There's only one person in this room who's responsible for your life, and that's you. Whether that's your career, whether you get married, whether you have children, what you do in anything, it's only you. So yes, you've got parents, you might have a spouse, you might have children, you might have mates, you might have work colleagues, but only one person. So if you take full responsibility for yourself, Nigel talked about imagination, I would say creativity. And hopefully you have a bit of a flavour of some of the creative things we have done. Creativity is really important, because particularly in this sort of, the world we're in now. I mean, Google, you mentioned Google. Google's what, 15 years old, Nigel? Okay, so it didn't exist 15 years ago. Right? So it's extraordinary. They're one of the biggest companies in the world, and they're an incredibly creative company. Even Apple, the biggest company in the world, the founder of this. I mean, Apple's only less than 30 years old. Okay, so, if you are creative, the world is your oyster. It really is. You talked about resilience, Nigel. Yeah, that determination, I would call it, perseverance, just to push on through. You will hit difficult points. You will think, oh my God, where is this going? And you just need to kind of push on through it. And the other thing is this thing about being multitasking, being multi-skilled. Learn as many different skills as you can. And if you're in business, the numbers are really important. I happen to be good at maths, but I find accountancy a bit like Nigel, that the practice of it really dull and boring. But I understand the principles of it. And if you want to go into business, you have to understand the numbers. Now, if you're not good with numbers, and you want to be in business, just make sure you've got someone working alongside you who's good at numbers. So I have this woman, Shanti, who's worked for me for the last 20-odd years. Everywhere I've gone, she's come with me. And she's a brilliant accountant. And I trust her implicitly. I know she'll be able to tell me what's going on. Because the biggest single reason companies go bust is they run out of cash. They can be growing at a huge rate. Lots of fantastic stuff can happen, but if you run out of cash, you run out of cash. So, yeah, that's really important. And my final tip is, if you're going to go into business to make loads of money, don't, because you won't. Okay? Do something you're passionate about. If you chase the money, you won't succeed. And there's a great example going back to Apple. So Steve Jobs found Apple in his garage because he was passionate about product and design and about creating something that would make a difference to people. And he built the company up And often people who start these companies aren't the best people to run them. And he recognised this, so he employed a guy called John Scully from Pepsi. So, you know, a guy who'd run a big company, serious job, employed him to run Apple. And Scully came in and ultimately fired Jobs. And then what Scully did is he chased the money. He stopped caring about product. He was just about how can we make the most money possible. And Apple almost went bust. Scully got fired and they invited Jobs to come back. And the Apple we know now is a result of that. So whatever you do, don't chase the money and do something you're passionate about. Thank you very much.